Hello and welcome to my new tryouts series where we'll be trying out a variety of solo RPGs and tools. As for the flow of this video, first I'll give you a brief introduction to the game we'll be trying out today, then we'll do setting and character creation, and then some gameplay to give you an idea of how the game works, and then I will play some more off camera so I can get a better feel for the game, and finally return and give you my thoughts, what I liked, what I didn't like, and that sort of thing. Today we'll be taking a look at Iron Valley by M. Kieran. Iron Valley is a pay-what-you-want hack for Ironsworn that emulates life and farming simulation games like Stardew Valley, Animal Crossing, and Story of Seasons. If you aren't familiar with Ironsworn, that's alright. I myself have never actually played Ironsworn, but I'm familiar with it through actual plays from the YouTube channels Me, Myself, and Die, and The Bad Spot. Anyway, back to Iron Valley. I really love that it included a page summarizing how to play because it's a kind of hefty rule book at 244 pages. Well, I think the rules itself are about 100 and something pages, maybe 144 pages, but with all the oracles and everything, it totals to 244. And to play Iron Valley and also Ironsworn, you will need 2 d10s and a d6. So let's take a look at the quick reference to get an overview of how the game should flow. So this is the How to Play Iron Valley in Just One page. So what it tells us to do first is set up our campaign. We will pick our world truths, and then our character truths, and then envision our arrival into Iron Valley. And then after that, it's more of a playing moment-to-moment sort of thing. So you will envision what your character does, and then this works with moves, which is what Ironsworn also does. Iron Valley has simplified moves, so it doesn't have quite as many as Ironsworn does. And usually the move that you will be making first is make a promise. And then when you are attempting something or working towards the promise, then the move you'll use is try your best. And then you'll do an action roll and you will mark progress towards the promise. And then when you are done with your promise, you will use the move reap the benefits. And then the move time passes. And every time you use time passes, you mark 1 tick on the calendar, and then the 4th tick means that the day is over. So it's a sort of way of showing the passage of time without managing it too much, I guess. I'm a little curious about what I'll think about this because I've never really had to manage time like this before in RPGs that I play. So I will definitely let you know my thoughts on that. And then the last thing is if you aren't sure what should happen next or you need an idea or guidance, then you can use the move Ask the Spirit of the Forest. And that's pretty much it. Outside of that, the game just walks you through things like the farming mechanics and caring for livestock, creating townies, and skills and stuff like that. But this is basically the foundation of the game. Regardless of whether you're farming or caring for livestock, you're still going to be following these steps of, making a promise, trying your best, reaping the benefits, time passes, etc. Okay, so with that out of the way, next we're going to set up our campaign. Personally, I find that the easiest way to get a good sense of rules is through an example. So I'm going to walk you through the creation of my campaign and everything and explain the rules and the mechanics as we are working through the example rather than just explaining it all up front. I hope that makes sense. Here is the character sheet provided by the creator of the game, and while I was reading through the rule book, I thought it would be really fun to play like a fortune-telling tea house kind of character. So basically, I will run a tea house where after you drink tea, I will then read your fortune from the tea leaves. And so I think that could be fun because it'll give us a sense of the farming mechanics because we'll grow our own tea leaves, and also the livestock mechanics because I will raise bees for honey for the tea. And I mean, maybe you could even raise cows for milk for the tea. So there's a lot of stuff that we can do, and then we'll also be testing out how the magic works with the fortune telling because there is optionally you can have magic in your world or not. And so, as you can see, I have already pre-filled out some skills. There are quite a lot of skills listed, and every character starts with 3 skills, and you can purchase more skills or upgrade them later on if you want. So the skills that I thought would be the most useful are farming, creature handling, and fortune telling, which makes sense, right? All right, so the first thing we need to do is we need to do our world truths, and we're going to first describe what sort of place Iron Valley is, like where is it? And for this one, we're gonna roll a D100 or 2 D10s. So let's do that. Okay, I'm gonna say that's 56. So 56 is Iron Valley is a small town hours from the city. Although people have electricity and television, most prefer to spend their time out in nature and in the company of others. The roads are unpaved, but the people are hard workers. Once a bustling town and a center for commerce, the town has fallen into disrepair in the last generation. Starting promise, learn the town's past. And I think these starting promises are optional, but let's just use them for our character. For our first one, what is Iron Valley? A small town hours from the city. Let's go to our promise tracker. Learn about the town's past. And the 6 next to it means that we should have 6 boxes for our promise tracker. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that means that we should technically draw up to here. I will say already, I'm sort of wishing that we had more options for where Iron Valley is, because right now we only have these 3 options: a medieval town, a small town hours from the city, or an arcology built on a garden planet. And in the back there are like quite a lot of oracles, so I feel like it would be nice to also have more variety here. But anyway, let's continue. What kinds of people live in Iron Valley? So once again, we have 3 options. So let's choose, or let's roll. Okay, so I'm gonna go with 88. And that is humans. For better or worse, everyone living in Iron Valley and the world happens to be human. That's not to say humans are not interesting creatures. They come in all shapes, colors, sizes, and personalities. They tend to cause more trouble than they know what to do with. But at the end of the day, they mean well. When creating townies, they might all be human. And our other options would have been a bunch of fantastical types of creatures or animal creatures like in Animal Crossing. But I'm good with humans. So let's go back to our character sheet. Humans. And then, is there magic in the world? We're gonna go ahead and say yes, just because I know that I already want to do fortune telling, but let's still roll just in case, because we'll see what kind of thing it gives us. But I already know I want to go with yes. I'll go with 58. So 58 is there is magic, but only deep in the wilderness. Magic repels civilization and vice versa. One cannot be further away from magic than right in the middle of the town square. In order to find magic, one has to wander deep into the woods where strange and wonderful things can happen without warning. This is interesting because I do like the idea of maybe let's say that magic is stronger in the wilderness for the purposes of our world. So yes, but magic is stronger in the wilderness. And that way, I guess that kind of makes sense as to why our character might want to move to Iron Valley, because if similar to Stardew Valley, we started out in like a big city and then we moved to this town, it could be that our magic was too weak in the big city, and so we were like, I want to move somewhere that has stronger magic. Okay, so now we are going to do our truths. We need to get our character's name. So I'm just gonna roll randomly for this. So let's go to the names oracle. And I think these are on 2 pages. Yeah, so let's see. Okay, I'm gonna go with the 91. 91 is sycamore. Wait, it's kind of small. Let me see. It's sycamore, squall, or udon. Okay, I'm gonna go with sycamore. That sounds good to me. Sycamore. Okay, and then for ancestry, we have, are you human? I'm just gonna go ahead and say yes because we've already determined that the people in our world are human, so I'm also gonna be human. And then what are your pronouns and gender presentation? I'm not gonna roll for that either because I'm just gonna make them similar to me. So let's do human, and then I use she, her pronouns, so I'm gonna use that, and then I'm gonna say feminine. So the next thing we're gonna do is our birthday. I will roll on the random date oracle. Okay, I'm gonna go with 86. 86 is winter 11. Ooh, so we're a winter baby. I wonder what significance does your birthday have, because at least when I was reading through, I don't quite recall your birthday having significance, but it could be that maybe you could make it have significance. Like, let's add it to our calendar here. This calendar was also provided by the game creator. As we create characters and stuff too, we can also add their birthdays here. Let me get a little emoji. So my birthday. Okay. And then for everybody else's birthdays, we'll put a little cake before it. Next up is, why did you leave the big city? So we have 4 options here. Let us roll. Okay, I'm gonna go with 21. So 21, I got a mysterious letter. Starting promise, find out who sent this letter. Our other options were, I don't remember, I couldn't live in the city anymore, and I promised I would return. I actually am thinking maybe I want to do with I couldn't live in the city anymore. Starting promise would be, envision what made your character leave so abruptly, what they can do to ease the pain in their heart, and then make a promise. Because, or I don't know, I mean, I guess we could go with what we rolled. I got a mysterious letter, and because I'm thinking about what I was saying earlier of how I know that I want my character to be a fortune teller, and they maybe know that magic is stronger out in the wilderness, or perhaps that could be what the letter is about. So maybe they get a letter saying that magic is stronger out in the wilderness, like they're not tapping into their true potential. And so that's why they end up going to Iron Valley. Okay, I like that. So then our starting promise would be, find out who sent this letter, and it would be a progress. We need 3 progress boxes. So got a mysterious letter, and then promise tracker, find out who sent the letter, and we need 3 boxes. I don't know how best to note how many boxes you need, so I guess just this line will be fine. Okay, next, where are you staying in town? 55. 55 is, I'm staying with a townie, envision who they are. Starting promise, get to know my host. Okay, interesting. And so I'm gonna stay with somebody, so that means I'm gonna have to create a character, but I'll do that later. I'm staying with a townie, and then we need get to know my host. I do like that it's giving us starting promises so that, you know, we have somewhere, like we know where we can start our game rather than just finishing the character creation and then being kind of lost, like, okay, what do I do now? What's in your backpack? Roll 3 times on the random item oracles. Okay, let's do that. So we need, got 70. 70 is fruitcake. 6, or that's 19. So fruitcake, and then a jar of pickles. Ew, I hate pickles. Well, I hate traditional, like, the normal cucumber pickles that we make. I don't really mind other sort of pickled items. Like, I do like pickled red onions, and I like quick pickles, I guess. So let's say it's a jar of pickled red onions for my sake. And then I guess I'll go with 5. 5 will be a jar of dark colored honey. Ooh, that's actually pretty cool for our character because we do want to make honey eventually. Fruit cake, a jar of pickles, and what was it? A jar of dark colored. Okay, that's gonna take up too much space, so I'm just gonna say a jar of honey. A small jar of dark colored honey. Yeah. I mean, what's the significance of it being dark colored? Yeah, I don't know. Next up, when are you arriving in town? First of spring or a very specific or important date, pick one or roll on the random date oracle. Okay, let's see. So we got 31, which is first of spring. Cool. How long do you plan to stay in town? 92. I don't know. Okay, I feel like that's valid. How long do you plan to stay? I don't know. And then next up, we need to do our character stats, our strengths and weaknesses. So your character has a set of 5 stats that represent your ability at tackling problems in various ways. Edge is all about speed and agility. Heart, communication and empathy. Iron is strength and endurance. Shadow is being mischievous and sneaky, and it is also for magic. And then wits is intellect and reasoning. Arrange the following values. So we need to do 3, 2, 2, 1, 1. Or we could roll for it on the random stat array, but I'm just gonna go ahead and assign them myself. So let's see. I know that I want to have good magic, so I'm gonna go ahead and put 3 for shadow, or should we do 2? I might do 2. Actually, we are starting off with our magic not as strong as it could be, so maybe we should even do 1 for shadow and let that improve over time. So I feel like that makes sense to have 1 for shadow. Even though we are a fortune teller, that doesn't necessarily mean that we're good at fortune telling, right? Okay, and then communication and empathy. Let's say that we are a good communicator. So I think I'm gonna put the 3 for heart, and then I think I'm gonna do 2 for wits, and then maybe the other 2 for iron. Okay, yeah, I think that's what I'm gonna do. So I'm gonna do 3 for heart, 2 for wits, and then I'll do the other 2 for iron, and then the last one will be edge. Cool, and we already have our skills set as I previously established. Yeah, so skills. So all skills come with the ability +1 to rolls, which means that anytime we're doing a farming task or, you know, whatever, we will add +1 to our rolls. All right, your new life is about to begin with your destination and character set. All that's left is to take the final step. Envision your arrival into Iron Valley. How is your character getting there? Are they walking, etc.? Okay, so then we're going to, yeah, we will envision our character arriving at Iron Valley and then try our best, which is one of the moves. Although I did realize I forgot to name the town. Where? I'm sure there was an oracle for that. Did I miss it? Did I miss the town? Oh, yes, the town name oracle. Okay, so let's name our town. Got 66. 66 is Old Plains. Yeah, okay, let's go with that. Old Or I think, are we supposed to roll twice? Old, and then we'll roll again for the second one. That is 8. So Old Brook. Cool. Old Brook. So Iron Valley, we'll put it here. Old Brook. All right, so that is our character set. And now, because we are going to be staying with a townie, I think it makes sense for us to create that character now, because we're probably going to arrive into Iron Valley or into Old Brook and meet whoever this person is. So let's go ahead and do that. Here's the townie tracker. Let me go to the character creation page. So there are these automatic oracles that we can click and just get a townie right off the bat, which I am tempted to do because I feel like it would save us some time. But let me just walk you through real quick what it says to do. We're going to do names, a job, and then their age, pronouns, presentation, and their traits and birthday. I do think, just for the sake of making our life easy, let's go ahead and use the automatic oracle. Okay, so we got Tomato, Pearl, Skelly. I guess these are some names that we can choose between. So they're going to be a blacksmith, a young adult, she, her, presentation is masculine. Traits will be selfish, unruly, and shy. Her appearance will be dark brown, wavy. Eyes will be steel blue. Charm point, utility belt. Okay, I guess that makes sense for a blacksmith tap. Birthday will be summer 19. Favorite gifts will be mushrooms and shoes. So we're going to be staying with the blacksmith, which is interesting. I do feel like we will probably want to get our own place soon. I don't necessarily want to stay with somebody forever. But I think it could be interesting to make this somebody that we maybe the letter pointed us to. Like maybe the letter was like, hey, stay with the blacksmith. Maybe this person is even the mayor. I don't know if mayor would technically be their job and not blacksmith, but I don't see why you couldn't be the mayor and the blacksmith. Like, it just kind of makes sense that you would stay with somebody like the mayor rather than just some random person. But I'm gonna go ahead and fill this out off camera. It didn't have spaces to write like the traits and the charm points and everything, so I just put it under the notes section. So we have Pearl, and I also put her birthday under the calendar on summer 19. And yeah, so now that we're pretty much set, so we're ready to start playing. All right, I'm gonna go and say that our character Sycamore, she starts off in the big city. It's all foggy and smoky and gross, and it's so noisy like cities are. And Sycamore, she just feels very dissatisfied with life. Like, she's currently working just, you know, a 9-to-5 job in some corporate office. She does fortune telling on the side, and she really wants to do fortune telling full time, but there just isn't a market for it in the big city. And also, she's not that good at it. Like, as much as she would love to imagine that she's a great fortune teller, she constantly gets fortunes wrong, and she feels like she's not really connecting with spirit in the way that she should be. And then she gets this letter. One day, while she just got off from work and she's kicking off her shoes, she's looking at the mail that she picked up from the mailbox down below in her high-rise apartment building. And she looks at the letter, and it says something along the lines of, "Dear Sycamore, the magic is weak in the city. However, magic is strong in Old Brook. Why don't you try coming?" Something like that. And so Sycamore is intrigued because she always thought that it was her problem. She thought that maybe she wasn't good at fortune telling because she wasn't good, but maybe it was she didn't have a strong enough connection to magic this whole time. And so this letter really intrigues her. And it includes a map, and also on the map is like a little star that's like, you can stay here or something like that. And that'll be the blacksmith's house later, we'll learn. And Sycamore, I mean, according to her wits, she is kind of a smart person, but at the same time, she has a lot of heart. And she is the type of person who goes with her gut feeling. And her gut feeling is saying, let's do this. And so she quits her job and she decides to move to Old Brook. And so she has gotten rid of most of her things, and she's traveling light. She's just moving to Old Brook with one suitcase, with just the necessities, her clothes, and of course her fortune-telling supplies. A necessity, of course. And she's really hopeful. She's like, I think this could be it. I could finally live my dreams here instead of this dead-end job that I don't love. And as soon as she steps foot into Old Brook, I think, is there a generator? There might be a generator that, like, we could get a description of the town, maybe. Let's see, because I want to see what does the town look like. Let's see, locations, maybe? That's not quite what I'm looking for. Oh, descriptor. Okay, let's try the descriptor oracle. So I'm gonna go with 26. So 26 is, where is it? I can't find it. Oh, here it is. Dusty. Dusty. Okay, let's get another one. So we need Dusty and 55. Mossy. Okay, interesting. Dusty and Mossy. There, maybe we should also roll on one of these. We've got theme. We've got action. Action, theme. Let's try the theme one. Like, let's see, like, what's the theme of the town? So we got, is it 7? Yeah, 7. Beloved. Interesting. Okay, so I'm gonna go to my notes. Town is Dusty, Mossy, Beloved. Great. So our character has just arrived at the town. She just got off the bus, and first thing she notices is how the town has no paved paths. So that's where the Dusty will come into play. We'll say that there's, like, as you're walking on the paths, you're kind of kicking up dust because there's no concrete anywhere on the ground. And that's something that really, really strikes Sycamore right off the bat, because she basically lived in a concrete jungle, right? And so now she's like, wow, I don't see a single piece of concrete anywhere. The houses are all made of wood and stone, and she can see, like, moss on the houses, and it looks so beautiful and rustic. And she can tell also that the townspeople love their town because it's so well kept. Everything is just spotless. Like, even though it might be dusty because of the paths, it's not necessarily dirty, you know? And so that's what she sees. And as she's walking into town, she sees somebody who's just standing there. Let's say she's walking into town square, and she sees somebody who's just standing by the bulletin board in town square. And let's also say that it's pretty early in the morning, so it's pretty dead. Like, nobody else is around, just this one person. Oh, also, I do remember that there is a weather oracle. I kind of want to roll for the weather, because that's a pretty important thing in Stardew Valley. So let's see, we are currently in spring. Let's go with 14. Sunny. Okay, great. Let's say it is spring 1 and it's All right, so we arrive into town and we see this person standing by the bulletin board, and as soon as they see us, they immediately come over to us, and we're like, oh, what the heck? Because you're not really used to being recognized. Like, when you live in the city, there's just so many people all over the place, and most of these people you don't know. So Sycamore, at least, like, she's kind of not used to somebody just like lighting up when they see her and heading over to her, wanting to speak to her. And I feel also, for the sake of the story, let's just say that she doesn't really have like too many friends or family in the city, so that way she doesn't feel particularly sad about leaving it. And this is where we're going to meet Pearl. And so she introduces herself as Pearl, and she says that she's the blacksmith, and that, you know, you can I heard from I don't know, because if we say who she heard it from, that might be who sent her the letter. Maybe we would get the answer to the letter too easily. Although, okay, let's do this. I think we're gonna go ahead and start to try to make progress on our find out who sent the letter promise. So we meet Pearl. She introduces herself and she's like, oh, the mayor, let's just say she said the mayor told her that we were coming, and she volunteered to host us. And so Sycamore asks, is the mayor the one who sent me the letter? And so now we're gonna roll. Let's go to the moves. I have the moves here. So the try your best move. When you attempt something difficult or work towards fulfilling a promise, envision your action and roll. And if you act with speed and agility or using a light tool, roll plus edge. With charisma, compassion, or humor, roll plus heart. With strength, endurance, or using a heavy tool, plus iron. With mischievous, stealth, or magic, plus shadow. With knowledge, expertise, or intuition, plus wits. I think, what do we want to say she is using? I'm thinking either heart or wits, because she's not necessarily, she's just asking a straight up question. I'm gonna go ahead and say, let's do plus heart. Let's say that she's trying to build rapport with Pearl, and she's trying to be sociable here and make conversation. She's trying to make it seem like she's making conversation. And so we're gonna roll plus heart. So now let's take a look at how we do the rolls. So for the roll, we need to roll our d6 and our 2 d10s. So let's do that. Or let me roll the d6 first. Okay, we got a 6. Quite lucky. So then 6 plus our plus heart, which is 3. So that'll be 9. And we're not going to use any skills. So our action score is going to be 9. And then we need to roll the 2 d10s and compare it to our action score. Okay, so we got 1 and 7, which means that 9 is higher than both 1 and 7. So that means that we got a strong hit. Sorry, I said this wrong here, so let me say it correctly. For a strong hit, that means that your challenge dice are both lower than your action score. For a weak hit, 1 die is higher and 1 die is lower than the action score. And for a miss, both dice are higher than the action score. There's also matches where both the challenge dice show the same result. Use these moments as chances to spice up the narrative, which is not relevant to us right now, but just letting you know. All right, so on a strong hit, you are successful. If this brings you closer towards fulfilling a promise, mark 2 ticks on it. Okay, so we are going to go ahead and say that we're going to get an answer from Pearl. Here's how you mark the ticks for when you're marking progress. So when you get to 4 ticks, that means that the box is full. So we're gonna mark 2 ticks on ours. Find out who sent the letter. So we're gonna do 1, 2. Great. And so we ask Pearl, was it the mayor who sent us this letter, basically? And Pearl will be a little confused as she's not entirely sure what letter I'm talking about. She just knows that the mayor told her, or the mayor told the town that we are coming. And Pearl is like, maybe it was the mayor. You should talk to them and find out. And so we have like a path for it, right? So we know, okay, next we should talk to the mayor. But first, we are going to go to Pearl's house. So Pearl's gonna lead us to her house. Let's see if we can get some descriptors for Pearl's house. Let's go back to, what oracle was that one that we used, the descriptor one? 53. Melancholic, okay, that's kind of sad. And 31. Excellent. Excellent and melancholic. Should I also do a theme? I think let's go ahead and do a theme. Let's just see what we get for that. 58. Luck. Interesting. All right, so let's say, so Pearl's house is, so it was melancholic, excellent, and luck. Okay, so what this is kind of making me think of is, what if our blacksmith Pearl is like, kind of like a emo goth alternative type of person? So the interior of her house looks kind of melancholic to somebody who's not really into that sort of aesthetic. They see all the black everywhere and they're like, oh, this looks kind of sad and dreary. But for somebody like Pearl, she's like, no, this is my vibe. Like, for me, I love this. This is excellent. And she has a lot of, I'm gonna say for excellent too, she's gonna have a lot of high quality items in her house. Like, you can tell that she really values artisanship. And so she doesn't just have a bunch of stuff strewn all over the place. Every item in her house is of really high quality, really good craftsmanship. And as for the luck side of things, I'm gonna say that she has a lot of maybe lucky items. What are those things called? Like, you know, like the rabbit's foot and the 4-leaf clover. I can't remember what those types of things, I think, are they just called lucky items? Whatever they're called. She has those sort of things. Like, she really likes collecting those sort of lucky items, and so she has a whole showcase of those things in her house. And she shows us to our bedroom, which she actually quite thoughtfully has made up to be more of a neutral aesthetic. Like, it's just, you know, white bed sheets, and it looks kind of plain because she doesn't want to assume what her guest wants to see. She's pretty thoughtful like that. And so we're in our room now, and we have more day to spare because we rolled a strong hit. We didn't have to pass any time, so we still have 4 ticks left in the day to use. So what do we want to do next? I guess it makes sense. We're gonna settle in a little bit. I mean, we did only bring 1 suitcase, so we don't have too much unpacking to do, and also we don't really want to stay here long term. So I feel like that's gonna bring us to another promise: find a place to stay. So let's make our own promise. She wants to find a place to stay because, like, her ideal life is to make her own. You know, she doesn't want to mooch off of somebody else for the rest of her life. We're gonna make a move, which is make a promise. When you vow to complete a personal goal, accept a townie's request, or commit to getting some work done, consider the urgency and complexity of this promise, then draw a number of progress boxes using the table below. So we need to decide what level, how many boxes do we want to put this for? Because if it's not, I wouldn't say it's laid back per se, because I don't think Sycamore is the type of person who feels comfortable living in somebody else's house forever. So it might be urgent for her. And then I'm actually a little confused by this, because why is laid back 1 progress box but then critical is 3? Because shouldn't it be that something that is more urgent should take less boxes? I'm not sure I quite understand, like, why is it, because this makes sense, like simple is 1, complicated is 2, puzzling is 3. That makes sense to me. So why is laid back 1? Is that a mistake? I don't know if that's the intention or if that's the mistake. I feel like maybe if I were more familiar with Ironsworn, I might know whether that's correct. I mean, this game has been around for a while, so surely this is the intention. Okay, I was looking on the itch.io page because I wanted to see if I could find any more information about this issue, and I did find a comment where somebody basically had the same concern that I did, and somebody replied to it. So I'll put both of these comments on the screen, but in summary, the reply says that they instead reframed urgency as importance because it felt like it made more sense to gain more rewards, like to have more progress boxes and gain more rewards, the more important a task is versus urgency. And I feel like that makes sense to me too. So going forward, I'm probably going to reframe them in my mind that way as well. Because like I said, it really just doesn't make sense to me to have something that is supposedly very urgent take longer to complete. But if you have something that's very important, then it makes sense that it would require more progress boxes and also take longer. I'm going to go ahead and say it's urgent, but I also feel like it's fairly simple. So let's do 2 progress boxes. But we aren't going to make progress on that one right now. I think the first thing she's probably going to do is try to get to know her host more, because I feel like that's only normal, you know, like you just arrived and then to immediately leave and be like, bye, is maybe a little disrespectful. So she's going to try to get to know her host. Let's say that Pearl is perhaps in the kitchen preparing some food for us, since we just arrived and it's pretty early in the morning. So, and we did admit to her that we hadn't eaten breakfast yet. So she's thoughtfully preparing us something. And let us roll, because we're gonna try our best. Okay, we got a 4, and then we're going to use, I think we're gonna use heart for this again, because we're communicating, we're trying to build rapport. So our action score is gonna be 7. Okay, 1 and 4. So we got another strong hit, because both are below. So we get to mark 2 progress. And what are we gonna learn about Pearl? Let's try the focus oracle. See what we get. So I'm gonna go with 80. 80 is sage. I'm thinking, because sage could be like a wise person, or it could also be, you know, the herb, the plant. And I think maybe let's go with sage. So I wonder if, how about we offered to do Pearl's fortune with sage tea. So perhaps one of the things that I brought with me was some tea. Or actually, how about Pearl offers us some tea and we can get a sense of like the good quality food that is grown in Old Brook, because back in the big city, perhaps the tea quality wasn't that tasty. And so when they're sitting down, they're eating, and Pearl is drinking this sage tea, and she's thinking about, or not Pearl, Sycamore is drinking this sage tea, and she's thinking about how delicious it is. And she sees the little tea dregs at the bottom of the cup, and she feels inspiration, like she feels connection to spirit. And she's like, I feel like I could give a good reading right now. And so she makes the offer to Pearl, and Pearl admits that she's actually really into this sort of thing. So let's say that's something that we'll learn about her, is she's really into like supernatural stuff, anything of that nature, which is why she also collects all these lucky items. She's really into that stuff, and she's like, oh, I would love for you to tell me my fortune, so we're hitting it off really well. Yeah, and Pearl actually lets Sycamore know that there aren't any fortune tellers in Old Brook. She's like, this is one thing that I wish we really had, was like a good fortune teller. So we're gonna tell her fortune. And for this, we're gonna try our best again. This time with our fortune telling. And I'm gonna go ahead and say that this is also gonna count towards our get to know our host promise tracker, because we're gonna try to get to know her better through the fortune telling. So let us once again roll. Oh no, 1. We might not do a good fortune. So we got a 1, and then plus shadow 2, plus fortune telling 3. So we need to roll above 3. Oh shoot. We got a 7 and an 8. So unfortunately, that is a miss. We fail and lose track of time. Okay, so perhaps because we're still so new to Old Brook, even though we feel the magic around us, we feel that the magic is stronger, we're still not connected to it well at this point. And so we don't do a good reading. We're still quite terrible at it. So we fail and lose track of time. So that means that we need to go to the lose track of the time passes move. Whenever you lose track of time, mark 1 tick on the current day calendar. If this tick does not fill the box, envision how time got away from your character. If you spent quality time with the townie, gain 1 favor with them, then continue playing. Okay, so on the plus side, we will gain 1 favor with Pearl, because I feel like we did, we did spend some good time with her. 1. Okay, so I think let's see what we can pull from the Oracle. So unfortunately, this means that we don't get to mark any ticks, right? Wait, let me see. On a weak hit, on a miss, you fail. Yeah, so we don't get to mark any ticks towards get to know your host. And I guess that makes sense because our fortune was probably wrong. So we didn't get anything. And I think here it could also be useful to do this move, Ask the Spirit of the Forest, because currently through the fortune, what we're doing is trying to connect with the spirit of the forest. And so when you seek to resolve questions, discover details about the valley, determine how other characters react, you may go with your first instinct, go with whatever seems the most fun, roll on an oracle table to get inspiration, format your query as a yes or no question, and roll on the following table. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to roll on an oracle table, and we're going to see what kind of reading did I give. And I feel like, let's go back to these. Action. Let's try rolling on the action oracle. So I'm going to say 75. Serve. And then let's do a theme. 34. I'm using like whichever dice is closest to me, and then if that makes any sense. So 34 is feast. And then let's do a focus. 56. 56. Market. Okay, it was serve and then feast and market. And so I think the fortune, we're kind of like fumbling around with this fortune. We're like, I predict that soon you're gonna serve somebody something, and Pearl is like, yeah, I'm serving you food right now. That's and Sycamore's like, yeah, I mean, maybe you'll be serving somebody else something. And Sycamore is already feeling like, oh shoot, this is not going to be a good reading. And she's flailing, and she once again, she just can only kind of think of food. She's like, feast, you're gonna have a feast soon. And she's just looking at the spread on the table that Pearl made, and she's like, shoot, this is also applies to the current moment. Or maybe a feast for your birthday. And she's like, yeah, we always do a feast on my birthday. That's kind of normal. So Pearl is not super impressed at our fortune, which kind of sucks because she was pretty excited to have a fortune teller come. And for the market one, we're gonna say that, oh, you know, she's gonna participate in a market soon. And Pearl is like, yeah, I am a blacksmith, so that makes sense. And yeah, so it's a pretty terrible reading, unfortunately. But, you know, what can you do? Unfortunately, we're not a great fortune teller. I feel like that should be enough gameplay to give you a sense of how to play. Although we haven't really done too much stuff yet. Like, we have all these promises. The way that I'm kind of envisioning this playing out is that, you know, we would find a place to stay, and then we'll start our farming and our bee keeping and start up our fortune telling practice. And so we have quite a ways to go before we will actually get to that point. And so I'm going to keep playing on my own, and I will come back later when I feel like I've gotten a better sense of the game. Especially, I want to get to a point where I have fulfilled one promise so that I can do the, you know, the reap the benefits. Let me show you that. Reap the benefits. So when you are ready to fulfill a promise, complete a project, or harvest the fruits of your labor, envision the conclusion of this commitment and then pick one. If fulfilling this promise fills you with satisfaction, gain satisfaction equal to the number of filled boxes in the progress track. So like if we have a 3-box progress, then we gain 3 satisfaction. If fulfilling this promise has improved your bond with a townie, you may also gain favor with them equal to the number of filled boxes. Envision your character savoring this moment, then time passes. If fulfilling this promise rewards you with resources, gain 3 resources for each filled box in the progress track. If harvesting from a crop or livestock that is in season, gain +1 resource per filled box. Envision your character savoring this moment, then time passes. So this is what we would do if we are farming, or, you know, harvesting honey. We would be using that. And then if fulfilling this promise rewards you with crafted items, gain X resources, where X is the total value of the ingredients multiplied by the number of filled boxes in the progress track. And then once again, time passes. And if fulfilling this, and so this is if we're crafting something, like, for example, crafting the tea, because resources is the raw material. So the tea leaves, and then the tea itself will be the crafted item. If fulfilling this promise benefits your job, gain 1 favor with a coworker or 2 resources/items per filled box in the progress track in any combination you choose. And then once again, time passes. So, and this would be for our fortune telling job. So when we're actually doing our fortune telling business, we could use this one. And outside of that, we can give the townie a gift, and we can also get help from our townies. And then the last moves we can do is root around. We can gather resources in the wilderness, and then we can also, let's make a deal. We can trade or barter with a townie, and then we can nurture a bond. When you are ready to grow closer to a townie, you have at least 10 favor with them. Then you will get 1 heart, and you will have a heart event, basically. And I think real quick, let me just show you the heart event oracle. So here's the heart event oracle. So let's say we have 10 favor with Pearl. We'll do 65. 65 is they surprise you with a new set of clothes. So basically the heart event is like, if you've ever played Stardew Valley, when you reach a certain number of hearts, you get this special cutscene that shows like a special moment, a tender moment with this character. So that's basically what the heart events are. So that's how you progress your relationships. So the promises are how you actually do things throughout the game. And then the hearts, the favor and the hearts are how you progress your relationships. And some final things that I forgot to mention is regarding satisfaction. So earlier I was saying that you could use it to upgrade your skills, and that's primarily the point of satisfaction. Is first of all, you can purchase more skills. So for 2 satisfaction you can buy another skill, and then for 2 satisfaction you can get the first upgrade. For 3 satisfaction you can get the next upgrade, and then for 5 satisfaction you can get the last upgrade. And basically these just give you some extra benefits. Like the first upgrade gives you an extra +1, and then the second upgrade gives you an extra plus tick on a hit, and then the last one is time passes only on a miss. So if you get a weak hit, time no longer passes. And then lastly, I forgot to mention that because we did get a weak hit, I marked 1 tick on our calendar to show that time is passing. So when we get 4 ticks, this day will be over. And lastly, I forgot that we did have this little section here where we could keep notes. So under each promise, I added some notes about what we were doing so far so that we can keep track of everything. And that's basically all there is to the game. So like I said, I'm going to continue playing, and I will come back with my thoughts once I feel like I've gotten a good sense of the game. Alright, it is several days later now, and I've played some more of Iron Valley. So let me first give you a brief rundown of what I did while I was away, and then after that I'll give you my final thoughts, so feel free to skip to that if you don't care about the playthrough. So I'm pretty sure the last thing I did was tell Pearl's fortune. So after that, I asked her for places to rent, and basically she told me to ask the mayor. So what I did next was I went to go see the mayor. And then I introduced myself to the mayor, asked about the letter, and the mayor told me that perhaps the witch in the wilderness sent it. And I asked for a place to rent, and she says she'll look into it later. So basically, I didn't make too much progress on finding a place to rent at that point. So the second day, but first of all, also I should say I played 6 total days. So on day 2, I decided to start up my fortune telling business. So I foraged for tea supplies because I didn't have any way to farm yet. And I found some sage leaves, which is what Pearl gave me before. And then I also met with the witch in the wilderness. I asked them about the letter, and they were very evasive, so I didn't really make progress there either. And then I just spent the day exploring to see if I could find some place to live. On the 3rd day, I tried to get to know Pearl some more, and I helped her out with her blacksmithing stuff. And then I went to see the mayor again because I really want a home. So I was asking about the home again. And what I actually did at this point was I reduced our promise tracker. So because originally it was 2 boxes and I was actually getting pretty frustrated with how long it was taking me to find a place to stay, because like I just wanted to start my farming, beekeeping dream life, you know? Like I didn't want to be tethered to Pearl's house for the whole playthrough. And so I decided to reduce it down to 1 box. And that's when the mayor gave me a plot of land that her sibling owned. Where are we? Oh yes. And yeah, she just gives it to me for free because that's how things work in Oldbrook. And I asked her about the history of the land, and that's when I learned about the whole sibling thing. So I learned that it belonged to one of her siblings who moved out of town. I gave her a jar of honey as a gift. And then on the 4th day, this was my last night at Pearl's because the previous night the cabin wasn't good enough to live in yet. So I basically spent some time cleaning up the cabin. Also, Pearl gave me some sage seeds as a parting gift. And yeah, I clean up the place. And so I move in, I plant the sage seeds, and then I ask around about like how can I get honeybees, and they tell me that they're on the rock cliffs overlooking the ocean, which I should say I drew this beautiful map to keep track of things. So yeah, I decided my home was like close to the wilderness on this side, and then we have the ocean, and the rock cliffs over here are kind of where I got the bees from. And so I managed to get some honeybees, and then I create a little hive on my property. So I have my sage seeds planted and my honeybees at this point. So then, spring day 5, I watered my plants, tended to my bees, and then I go to Spruce, who is the witch in the wilderness, and I asked if they would mentor me, but they refused to do so, basically telling me that magic comes from within and it's hard to teach. So then I give them a really good reading. For the first time, I rolled a strong hit on this one. So for the first time, I was able to connect with spirit and give an actually good reading. And also, I should note that for this part of the playthrough where I met Spruce and I did this reading, I actually used a different tool called Vox Profunda, which will be my next video, so feel free to check that out if you are interested in seeing me test that. But I figured while I was testing Iron Valley, it would be a good opportunity to test out another tool. And so yeah, I gave a great reading, and I learned some more about them, like that they were from another town and their mom judged them for wanting to learn magic. So basically they like kind of distanced themselves from people and stuff like that. And they gave me some silver blossom tea in thanks for the reading. And I once again asked about the letter, but I think I rolled a miss on that one. So once again, I made no progress on that. And then I foraged for more tea leaves. On our day 6, it is the community garden day, which is one of the pre-established events in the calendar. So you can see it here. And from what I recall, I think the community garden day is basically an event where everybody like works in the community garden together. So I once again tended to my sage, and at that point the promise box was fulfilled. So I harvested it and tended to the bees again, went to the community garden day. I tried to learn more about the town's past, but I had a miss there. And then I tried to get to know Pearl some more. I got a weak hit, so I learned that she wears like a heirloom ring. And then after the event, I went home and cleared away some junk on my land, planted more sage seeds. And that's all I did. So I can show you my promise tracker. So this is how far I got in those 6 days. And I'm pretty sure that if I had not changed this, I probably would not have made much progress on that either, which I will get to in the future. I added these 2 promises because I'm pretty sure these weren't here last time. Restore my cabin/land, which I intended to be like a much longer promise, and then grow the sage, harvest the honey. For these, I intend to just keep using the same little thing here and just keep adding more boxes as I grow more. And yeah, I think that's all you need to be caught up. So let me get into my thoughts. All right, so what did I think about Iron Valley? First thing that I want to talk about is the Stardew feeling. How did that come across to me? I thought it was done really well. I feel like it scratched a similar itch that, I really like those types of games like Stardew Valley and Animal Crossing, so I felt like it did a good job of simulating that experience. However, I do feel like for an RPG, it was a bit too crunchy for me. Like when it comes to playing a video game, I don't mind it as much because it's not mechanics that I'm having to think about. Like I'm not necessarily having to keep track of, the stats and the character information and everything. The game just does that for you. So when you are having to keep track of all that stuff on your own, I do feel like sometimes the mechanics can get in the way of the story. And I don't know, like I'm still a little on the fence about this, which is why I have this question mark here, because I can't quite decide if I felt that it was too crunchy or not. Like I kind of think it was, but at the same time I did also enjoy the mechanics. The next thing I want to talk about are the tables. I really liked that it had lots of options for you, and so when you're playing solo, these sort of tables are pretty important. You need to have some sort of external way to get ideas for, things to put in the game, like the characters and events and stuff like that. And I barely even scratched the surface of the tables that I used. Most of the time, I just used like the townie creator, like the townie generator ones, and then the theme and the focus table, I think, is what I used. I will say one thing where I felt a little disappointed is the startup options. I felt like, we have all these tables in the back, and yet we only have like maybe 3 options in the beginning in terms of when you're creating your own character. So I felt like it might be nice to have some extra options there when it comes to character creation, because I feel like at least if you're playing just one campaign, it probably doesn't really matter if you're gonna roll up a character, but in terms of replayability, I would want more options there. But at the same time, I am also the type of person where generally I'm not a huge character roller. Like when I play on my own, not for these videos, I personally just create a character how I want them to be. I don't necessarily roll for a character. So, and same thing with the setting. Like I really like world building and character creation, so that's something that I just do on my own. And then what I like solo RPGs for is more so the game mechanics and the plot structure that it puts me through rather than the character and the world creation. So I know I could do that on my own. But at the same time, I also feel like if you are somebody who more so enjoys rolling for a character, in terms of replayability, I could see that being a little like, oh, I rolled this world again, or I rolled this, character truth again. So I could see that being, something that you might want some more options for. Next up, we have the stats, the character stats. I will say that the stats came from Ironsworn, like the whole edge, iron, heart thing, like that comes from Ironsworn. I don't necessarily have any criticism about the stats, I guess. I liked them, but at the same time, this was the area where I was starting to feel like, is this too crunchy for me? Because I generally play pretty light mechanic type of RPGs where there aren't necessarily a ton of character stats, and so I felt like it was making me feel a little how I felt in D&D. Granted, D&D is a lot crunchier than this game, but one of the things I don't really like about D&D is just how many stats and things there are to keep track of. It's just not for me. I will also say I did like the skills and what that added to the game, because I feel like the stats do have their limits. So I liked that you could have these skills that would boost your rolls and, you know, help you out. I also enjoyed the dice mechanic. It was a little hard for me to wrap my mind around. When I was playing initially, I had to check the rules a lot because I was like, what was I supposed to do again? But I will say this is probably just a symptom of me not really doing these sort of crunchy mechanics that often. I think if you're somebody who's more used to having a lot more of these sort of dice rolls in your game, then you would probably be fine with it. But for me, I was like, oh my god, what am I looking for again? Does the challenge dice have to be higher or lower? And so I was constantly confused about that. But my biggest complaint about the stats are I don't think you can level them up. I only noticed that after, and it made me feel a little sad that I chose 1 for Shadow. Because if you remember, so this was something that I just completely didn't realize until, you know, pretty late while I was playing. But if you remember in the beginning, when I was creating the character, I guess I had that kind of D&D mentality of where, you know, over time you level up and you improve your skills. And so I was thinking that I would start my character off as 1 Shadow to show that she is bad at magic, and then as she lives in Oldbrook, she would, you know, she would raise that stat and it would show that she's getting better at magic. But then I was like, I don't see any mechanic for leveling up your stats. I think the only thing you could level up were the skills. So you could buy more skills and you could upgrade the skills, but you couldn't upgrade your stats. So to me, I don't know. I think that's actually an Ironsworn thing, not necessarily just limited to this game. I think in Ironsworn, when I was looking into it, you don't level up, which is kind of weird to me, because I don't know. I feel like if I'm gonna have stats, like if I'm gonna deal with all these numbers and everything, I also want to level up system, you know, because it feels weird to me as somebody who, like, I really like characters, and so I think it makes sense to me to show that they're progressing mechanically through, you know, like that they're growing by leveling up their stats. I just can't imagine like being stuck at 1 Shadow forever. I was like, oh god, no. Now I'm like, my magic is just gonna always be terrible. I guess technically I could by improving my fortune telling, I would be basically leveling up in a way, but I don't know. There was just something kind of dissatisfying to me when I realized that the only thing I could level up was my fortune telling and not necessarily my shadow. I guess it's kind of funny because here I am saying, oh, I think this game might be too crunchy for me, but then wishing for more things. And it's just because it just makes sense to me logically to be able to level up your character, especially like this game is probably going to take ages to play, which I'll get into a little bit later, but I only played 6 days in game, and that took me multiple days to do. Granted, it wasn't like I was playing 24 hours a day, but you know, I mean, it took a decent amount of time to move through each day. And so if you were playing a full year, just 1 year, I could see that taking me at least a month, maybe more, to do. And so to play a campaign for that long, and especially if you wanted to do multiple years, and to not level up your stats is kind of weird to me. I feel like personally, what I could see myself doing is using the satisfaction, which you can use to upgrade the skills, and probably put some number on the satisfaction. Like, let's say every 10 satisfaction, you can spend 10 and level up your skill by 1 or something. I could see you doing something like that, because there is already a system in place for upgrading So I feel like you could just take that same system and apply it to the stats. So you can choose to either buy a new skill, upgrade a skill, or upgrade your stat. And because upgrading a stat is quite a big deal, I feel like it should have a decently high level of satisfaction, like 10, maybe even 15, like quite a lot. But anyway, enough rambling about that. Okay, the next thing. So the next thing I want to talk about is the promise system. I will say that I both liked and disliked the promises. And this is another area where I was like, I can't tell if I like the mechanics or not. Similar with the stats. Like the stats and the promises are the two main areas where I wasn't sure how I felt about it because I was so conflicted. So on one hand, what I really liked about the promises is how much structure it provided. I felt like I always knew what to do. That I didn't ever feel like, oh, what should I do next, you know? So I really liked that. You just have this list of, okay, here's my to-do list, basically. You know that you can hit any of these things during the day. And so that's what I loved about the promises. What I didn't like was it took so long. It took so long. I understand that it's a cozy game and it's supposed to be kind of chill and slow going, but at the same time, like for example, I was saying earlier that I ended up reducing my promise that was to find a place to live. I ended up reducing it from 2 boxes to 1 box because I was getting really frustrated with how long it was taking. Because, you know, if you do a strong hit, which is quite unlikely, I will say, because in the 6 days that I was playing, like, I don't know what the exact odds are for this. I'm sure somebody has worked it out somewhere. But in the 6 days that I was playing, I think I only rolled a strong hit like 25% of the time. And then most of the time, like I'd say 50, maybe even more than 50, like, I don't know, a little more than 50% of the time, I was doing a weak hit. And then I very rarely got misses. Like, I think I got maybe like 2 or 3 misses in the entire 6 days. So misses were not super common. Strong hits were a bit more common. And then weak hits was mostly what you were going to get. And so if you got a weak hit, you're only marking 1 tick. And so let's say that I only rolled weak hits for my entire promise to find a place. That means that I would need to do 8 separate moves just to find a place to live, which I don't feel is necessary. And the reason why it's a complaint for me, though, is because personally, I like to handle things a bit more on the narrative side versus mechanically. So what I mean by that is that when it comes to finding a place to live, I would personally prefer to think of the steps that it takes and then just roll once or maybe twice even, you know? Like, I don't want to roll for every single step. And so that's where I was getting a little frustrated. And the thing is, yes, you can just reduce the number of boxes and then it'll take less time. But the problem with that is that it also reduces the amount of satisfaction you get. And if you're somebody like me who's handling these things narratively, it's basically like you're doing the same amount of work but getting less amount of satisfaction just because you didn't want to use the mechanics. So that's where I was like, oh, I feel like I could just role play this basically very, you know, on my own and achieve the same end result that rolling did. And so personally, I think I would probably reduce the number of ticks required per box. Like, instead of 4, maybe just 2 per box or even 1 per box. I don't know. I just feel like I would want to reduce it personally so that I'm rolling less and that I can move through the narrative in a less clunky way. Anyway, yeah, basically just I was a little impatient with how long the promises were taking and how many rolls I was having to do. Like, just the amount of rolls was just too many for me personally. So that was one of the places where I was like, is this too crunchy for me? I don't know. The next thing, replace urgency with importance. If you recall, when it comes to making a promise, you had to consider the urgency and the complexity of the promise, but I felt like urgency just did not make too much sense in terms of how many boxes you had to mark, because if something is more urgent, it didn't make sense for me that it would take longer to complete. So I mentioned earlier in the video that I found a comment that said that they replaced urgency with importance, and I personally really liked that change. And then my last thing regarding promises is, how do you handle small promises that feed into bigger ones? The reason I was wondering about this was because, for example, like growing sage and harvesting honey, they are related to my start a fortune telling business promise. And so I wasn't sure if I should also be marking stuff off for this. Like, can you mark multiple promises at one time? Or should I only mark off my sage one? So I was just wondering how to handle that sort of thing, because I feel like there are many things you could take one action that could fulfill multiple promises, or that could work towards multiple promises, and I didn't know how to handle that narratively. That's not necessarily a criticism, just something where I was like, I don't necessarily know if it's all right for me to mark more or not. I just didn't, because I wasn't sure. The next thing that I want to talk about are the moves. I liked the moves. I liked how simple they were. I will say, though, that like 95% of the time, you're just going to be using the try your best move. Like between try your best, make a promise, and time passes, those are pretty much the moves that you're going to be making most of the time, which is fine. Like, if it works, it works, I didn't really have a complaint about that. It's just something to note, where if you are more used to Ironsworn, which has a lot more moves. Is it something like 40 or something? I don't know. I'm not too familiar with Ironsworn, but coming from that system, I could imagine you being a little dissatisfied with how simple the moves are here. But I felt like they worked well, and so I don't have complaints there about the moves. The next thing, time. So I liked the concept of the way the passing of time was being handled, but I don't necessarily know if I liked it in practice. So what I mean by that is that I was basically always wishing for weak hits, because I wanted to mark progress on my promises, but I also wanted time to pass. Because when you get a strong hit, time doesn't pass. And the unfortunate thing about that is, if you roll like a string of strong hits, it means that, like, I don't know, the day just feels abnormally long to me. And I want to move through the day. And I guess this is just my impatience coming out again, because I was getting a little frustrated how long each day was taking. Like, yes, I wanted to make progress on my promises, but I didn't want to be stuck on the same day just to do that. And so whenever I got a weak hit, I was like, yes, because I wanted to move time. I will also say, I was playing this game for a video, and I was trying to move through it relatively quickly, so that I could put this video out. That could have contributed to my impatience, because I think maybe if I were more so just playing this on my own, casually, I wouldn't be as frustrated with how slow time was passing. And the next thing, the sheets. I really enjoyed the sheets that it provided, like the character sheet, the townie tracker, the promise tracker, the calendar. I thought they were all great. The only thing I will say is we need an inventory sheet. And what I mean by that, so on our character sheet, we basically have this here, what's in your backpack. This one line to show what's in my backpack. And as I was playing, I realized, this is not enough space. But it's easy enough to make your own inventory, so I think it's fine that it doesn't necessarily have a sheet for it, but I could see it being useful to provide one, just so that people have an easy way to organize all their items and everything. Like what I did here is fine, but I was just saying that that's a little blind spot that I noticed. Yeah, so my overall thoughts. I will say I had fun. I enjoyed it. I don't want all my criticism to make it seem like I didn't like the game, because I actually did really enjoy the game. I just would tweak it next time I played. Like, I can't imagine playing it as is, because some of the things just don't really work for me. Like, definitely the leveling is one thing that I would change. I would try to add something there. And I would try to reduce the number of dice rolls. So I'd probably reduce how many ticks it takes to fulfill the promises, because like I just don't want to be rolling for every single thing like that. And I'm on the fence of if I would change the passage of time or not, because I think it's fine how it is. Most of the time you're not like spending ages on one day. If you get incredibly lucky, or perhaps unlucky, if you want time to pass, then it might be unlucky to you. But if you get lucky and you roll a bunch of strong hits, then the day will be extremely long, and I could see that feeling a little frustrated of like, okay, I just kind of want the day to pass. But it works, so I think I would probably leave it as is. But yeah, those are my thoughts on Iron Valley. I will say, once again, I just want to reiterate that I really enjoyed it. I love Stardew Valley. I love these types of cozy games, and I could definitely see myself playing it again. So yeah, that is it, and I hope you have a great day. See ya!